theme song for the Gear Podcast. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're here.
We're back with another episode of the Gear Podcast, and we've been waiting for this one for quite a while. He needs no introduction. We got Mr. Michael Nielsen on the show. How are you, Michael?
I'm great. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. I got a brand new coffee here. So, yeah, raise your glass, everybody.
So for anyone unfamiliar with what Michael does, they may know him as somebody who makes very informative, great-sounding YouTube videos, but you also, you do music for a living, right? So your company, Ninja Tracks. How else would you describe what you do?
It rotates. It's a lot of everything, which I think is what everyone does these days. Like, you do everything. So I'm a producer, engineer, composer. I guess I feel uncomfortable putting composer anywhere closer to the top of that stuff because there's guys that have just a completely different relationship with notes that I don't even understand. So my relationship comes from I could write some cool stuff, but it comes from a different angle from guys that I go, I'm comfortable calling you a composer. But yeah, so I have a company called Ninja Tracks that we specialize in music for advertising, movie trailers, video game advertising, all that kind of stuff. And then I also write music for video game scores separately. Like we've done some stuff for League of Legends, Splinter Cell, which was a big Xbox game at the time. And then more recently, we've done the last 3 of the Forza Motorsport franchises.
Awesome. So it's funny you mentioned League of Legends because I was talking to my wife like 2 days ago. We were going to the gym and she's like, I kind of found this playlist with these songs that I really like. And, a lot of them are from this game, League of Legends. And, I was aware of the game, but had never played it. And I knew it was a bit of a thing. And she does cosplay and things like that. So those kind of things are very popular. So that's kind of wild to think that, probably some of your stuff was on that playlist because there was some good kind of, like pop and rock stuff on there, just like punchy tunes. And I really
the pop and rock stuff is really good, and it's gotten better and better and better. It's like pretty incredible, super high level now. When we were doing it, it was more on the score side. They were releasing themes for the different characters that you can be. So we did the Udyr theme, and there was an accompanying like online comic book that we scored, and then that year they had the World Series of League of Legends, and we did like a 3-minute opening cinematic for the championship thing. So that was a cool year to do that stuff. And then we haven't done anything since with them, but that team over there is nuts. They're so good.
And obviously Forza is that's a big thing, like that type of game. It's like a racing game, right?
Yeah, it's so Sony has their Gran Turismo, and then Microsoft has Forza Motorsports. They're competing like just racing games, and we do the score. And the last version of it, Forza 7, had a bunch of songs, which was really cool to do, sort of like garage rocky, bluesy stuff. So I was just buying amps and pedals like every 2 weeks. I'm like, what? It's for work, How about this vintage orange and this old, another Fender? I was just like collecting. And then when the game ended, I was still in buying mode, and I just started compiling. I could feel the stacks of just crap piling up, and then I had no outlet for it. It was like, what am I going to do with all these fuzz pedals? Like, no one else lets me use fuzz in their music, so.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite, I'm sure you've watched all the Tom Holkenberg stuff he put out on YouTube. I feel like that was kind of one of the first great YouTube in the studio series. My favorite thing there is still him talking about the Mad Max soundtrack and the way he approached, like, as someone who doesn't play guitar, how he was like, well, how do I get a good stoner rock sound? I think I just get an SG, a fuzz pedal, and an orange amp, and then I make cool noises, And
I remember that one.
I remember watching and just going like, that's actually so much more in tune with the concept of play and playing a guitar than what so many of us as we're like serious guitar players do. So I really enjoyed that. And just the use of fuzz. I mean, that's a whole fuzz is its own kind of universe of gear nerddom, isn't it?
I think so. I love fuzz and like rootsy stuff. I rarely do it on my channel, and because I kind of started the channel as this sort of like rack, 80s racks and 90s racks and rack gear. So then I think whenever I do like a fuzz thing, people are like, what is that? Like, it just kind of, the core audience is not into that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Is that something you found? I like it. Because I know, I mean, one of my favorite kind of blues, I don't know if you'd call them roots, but definitely kind of modern blues artists is Philip Sayce, who you've worked with, right?
Yes. So that's where, I've been a producer too, like I've been at this since I was 19. So I was producing pop music. Like I did I told you it's late for me, so I'm spacing on the names. But I did some music with Selena Gomez before she became huge. Selena Gomez.
That's awesome.
But a lot of the like Disney girl pop stuff in this era, we were working on that stuff.
Wow.
And then I got to the point where I was like, I can no longer. I'm going to drive my car off this bridge if I have to ruin one more song with a girl that can't sing, that because she has a TV show.
Right.
So then I started writing. A buddy of mine was doing movie trailers, and I'm like, well, let me just try something like that. And a lot of times I would get feedback on my music where they're like, it makes me feel like Top Gun or something like that. I was like, yeah.
You're welcome.
Because it's awesome. And so it really was like, also the other feedback that I had sometimes was that, a lot pop music should be the vocalist. That's number one, especially in like non-rock, non-band oriented stuff. It's got to be the vocalist. And I would just produce the shit around the vocalist to where the vocalist would just be like, who cares about the vocalist? Like, they're way back there. But when they're paying for the production, they're like, why'd you throw me all the way in the back?
Mm-hmm.
But it was really because I liked the instrumental stuff so much better. And I find that much more interesting than recording vocals, really, and doing vocal music. So that's how I ended up sort of shifting over to scoring. But I just lucked upon meeting Philip Sayce, where our studio was. He had come to town and a friend put us together. And I think the moment for me was, I don't know if you guys, do you know Ian Moore, the artist?
Oh, no, that's a new name to me.
Okay, so he's an Austin-based guitar player. Amazing. I'll send you guys some links. That's like, he's incredible. And it was the time when like Stevie Ray had passed away and Kenny Wayne Shepherd was pretty big. Mm-hmm. And there was other guys that were sort of like shooting for that new spot. That was this huge gap that was left open by Stevie Ray. So this guy, Ian Moore, I mentioned, and he's like, how do you know Ian Moore? And Jeff Healey. And he was like, how do you know Jeff Healey? Like, I play with Jeff Healey.
That's right.
Jeff was one of the reasons I just like got so inspired to play guitar in the first place. So we just hit it off like crazy, and I've learned so much from him, and I think we just have a really cool relationship. Like, I just bring this whole other side of production to his like just hardcore fiery blues stuff. So we have a blast when we're together. At
Dallas Guitar Festival, I think 2019, I happened to be in the States, and it was like, my wife's family is from Dallas, so we were visiting, and I just happened to be there, and I was like, the Guitar Festival's on, I'm going to go down. And like as I got there, I heard this guy on the stage kind of ripping, and I walked out, and it was just like, it took me 2 minutes to realize what was going on, but I was like, who the fuck is this guy? He's got it. Like, it's just oozing charisma, and his guitar playing and tone is insane, and he's singing. I was like, this is Philip Sayce. Of course it is. Like, he played a song that I recognized. I was like, I knew it was good, but I didn't know it was like this level of, he just had it.
I don't even think anyone's captured what he does live. I don't know if it's possible. It's one of those things where, there's just certain bands that they have so much energy live, and the dynamics are so big. And the interaction with the audience is a whole part of the show. Mm-hmm. It just like, and his playing unplugged it's amazing to hear. It was the first time when I met someone that they could play so well that unplugged, you're like, oh, it still sounds exactly the same.
Yeah.
Not hiding behind distortion and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It just did not matter what you plugged into. It was still amazing.
It was like a thing, the core clientele of that entire festival was mostly like middle-aged dudes because, that's guitar. But even for that setting, it was like, it was like his whole performance was like, it had this like sexiness about it, which you just don't get at those kind of things. And you were like, yeah, this is something that, but here in Australia, the whole like, I guess we didn't really get the sort of like blues thing. We got more of like a roots thing that's really, really popular. So it's like, guys who like to go and surf a bit and wear Ugg boots to the shops and play a bit of acoustic guitar, like that style of like, more you like Xavier Rudd, Jack Johnson, that kind of stuff was really, really popular in the 2000s. So you don't really get the kind of like pure electric blues thing, but it was like, I could see him working with that kind of crowd here. Like you get a lot of those festivals in the sort of regional towns and the surfing towns. And it was just, you just know sometimes. And I'm sure you've had a lot of experiences with that, which is my segue to, you're also someone who's worked with like, top tier rock stars, like for example, John Sykes. So,
so that was so weird how I connected with Sykes. We had been working with the Baja Men, who let the dogs out guys.
Yeah, right.
So like they literally came from the Grammys and then came to our studio that night and we're like, cool, we're going to work with you. And my production team, we're like, this is going to be amazing. And then we'll have a huge hit and we'll be, we'll take off. And then of course they were a one-hit wonder and, we did the album after and it just didn't work out. That was
2002. Is that right? 2003?
That is right around there. Yeah.
Yep.
Right around there. And it's funny because I'll go to Disneyland and be at Disneyland and be like, that's us. That's our song. And this is ours. So I hear some of that stuff there, which is fun. But the Baja Men's tour manager was also John Sykes's tour manager. So when I found that, I was like, dude, like I gotta meet him. And he's like, it's not really that kind of party where you just call up John Sykes and you go meet him. He's this very friendly guy, but it's more like you'd expect, I wouldn't expect to be able to call up David Coverdale and just get an audience with David Coverdale. Like, they're royalty kind of level guys. So it took about 3 or 4 years. And at one point, there was a lot of talk and they're like, cool, you're going to produce his next album. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I was so this is how green I was. It was like way back to Harmony Central. Do you remember the Harmony Central?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So I was like deep in that. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going to produce the next John Sykes album. Like, and then I get a call like, what are you doing talking like about John Sykes? I was like, oh, I guess I can't. That's right. You don't do that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So anyway, Sykes was going to go out on the road, which he hadn't done, I think, in a decade or something like that, and he wanted to record a live album with it. And he got Tommy Aldridge on drums, which there was this big drama of that. Like we're, I think, like at the airport, and he's talking to Coverdale, and Coverdale, from what I got, like, and after this is, what I hear, Coverdale's like, if you don't do this tour, this Japanese tour, like, you're no longer going to come play. You can't just do Whitesnake songs in basically like a cover band and then come and do it in the band too. Mm-hmm. So he ended up going, and then I saw him with Whitesnake later. So I guess it all
worked out.
It all worked out. But yeah, it was Tommy Aldridge, Derek Sherinian.
Wow.
So they had this keyboard player, and he showed up for the rehearsals and was bucket of sweat. like, oh my God. Because he had like less than a week to learn the songs. And it's not like they're Dream Theater songs that are like brutal, but he just was not ready. He was not at that level. I sympathize. So he was out, and they needed to get a keyboard player quick that could learn all this stuff super fast. So I believe they traded. Sykes played on his album, and then he played on this.
I'm pretty sure I bought that album because it was like, oh, John Sykes plays on it. And there's also, because there was another album with like Zach and Miola and Yngwie on it as well. It's like, well, this is going to be the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, I went over to, this was after we did the Japanese stuff. And I'll circle back because there's a couple other stories I'll tell you about that. I would go over to Derek's house and he'd be like, all right, this is what I want John to do. And like I go over there and Tony Franklin is there, bass player from Blue Murder.
Oh, yeah.
It's like ninja. And he's like, oh, tell John hi. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the best day of my life. I go back to John and it's like, whatever. All right. I'm like, this is your buddy from Blue Murder. And so, yeah, John would record his, so I'd set him up to record his solo stuff. And then he would always record a couple and then I would leave and then he'd record them again. And he's like, you could edit whatever you want together for that. And then Derek was really cool. He's like, look, I know you guys are editing, but give me everything. I know John doesn't want me to have everything, but give me everything and I'll put it together. So he was a cool dude. And then, so going back to that Japanese tour, Sykes had just bought a Pro Tools rig from some dude. So basically, they're like, here's the Pro Tools rig. We're taking it to Japan and you'll record it. It's like, okay, great. Again, Green stupidly assumed it was going to work. So we're at the first show. It's all set up and everything is good. I got my session set up and stuff. Hit record. I was also triggering like the opening song samples and some drum loops and stuff like that. So
this sounds like my worst nightmare, just quietly.
Oh, and so
this sounds like you having to work with Ragdoll, Troy.
Green, stupid. I was triggering drum loop and rhythmic things from like the middle back of the room. Mm-hmm. Is way out of sync to the drummer.
Yep.
So Tommy's like, what do you got to trigger it on time? I'm like, dude, I have good time. I could tap in really good time.
Yeah, but you can't beat the physics of sound, unfortunately. It's not quite going to happen.
It didn't even occur to anyone to be like, I should probably be like right next to you or something like that. Yeah. Anyhow, so that was one failure. And then the other failure is I look over and I don't even remember the errors, but it was just like Pro Tools error, Pro Tools error, Pro Tools error. And I got through like 2 songs with about 20 errors. I just sat down. I was like, I'm done. And that night I got ripped a new one by John Sykes, my hero, in a hotel room. But it was like, I was like, all right, tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stay up all night. I'm gonna fix this. And I did, and it ended up working out. And he was very appreciative, and he was a gentleman.
What did you fix? Like, I don't understand how you fixed anything. If it crashes, it crashes, right?
Yeah, I don't even remember now. It was like I think I had to just like strip everything way down. I can't remember what was happening. Going back to the drives. This is so long ago. It was like the Buster style SCSI drives that were just like.
Yeah. What year was this? Was mid 2000s as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, early mid 2000s also.
Oh man, the reliability of Pro Tools at that particular. I'm a massive Pro Tools guy, and I have been for about 20 years, or maybe almost 20 years now. But yeah, that was not a fun time to be a Pro Tools user. It hasn't been till like 5 years ago. Now it's like okay, but yeah, it was brutal. So man, yeah, you tell that story, I'm just like, oh.
So I was well prepared for Pro Tools nightmares, but I was, kind of dumb and thinking I should have done that the week before.
Yep.
I should have said, like, give me the rig and I got to test this over and over.
Yeah.
I had went to record an orchestral session for a film score. Mm-hmm. It wasn't my music. It was a a friend of our, this composer, Brian Tyler, who was a very good friend of mine in college and stuff. We hit it off like crazy, and we had like some small bands together. He ended up going and scoring Yellowstone and Fast Furious.
Yeah, I know that name. I've seen that name before. Yeah,
Avengers. I mean, he's A-list Hollywood composer.
Yep.
But before he was there, on his way up, I was working with him sort of more in engineering and just whatever needed to be done, capacity, adding guitars on things and stuff. Scoring session, very expensive studio. Like, where's the Pro Tools rig? This is when, studios were still taped. So if you needed Pro Tools, you had to rent it. Okay. And it came in, and there's 50 world-class musicians sitting there with, the sheet music. And a dude walks in and brings 4 giant plastic bins and is like, here's the Pro Tools rig.
Oh my God.
The producers, directors, everyone's looking at me like, we're ready to record. Like, I have 20 minutes to build the Pro Tools rig.
Oh my God.
And have that ready to go. So I've had a lot of those kind of nightmare experiences.
And you're on Logic now, right?
Yeah. So. Yes. No, I'm on Logic.
Yeah. Look, yeah, that's scarring. Why would you do everything on Reaper, everybody? It would have been so much easier from the start. Anyway, we'll talk about that. I missed, when I started really getting to studio, sort of like 2010-ish. It's like coming out of like uni and my own Pro Tools setups, which were like 003s and that sort of thing, which even that was like, the reliability of it was a bit, hit and miss. But getting into like TDM systems, the studios I was in sort of had that set up, and the engineer was like, he knew, like the studio owners, like they knew what was happening with that. I just didn't even touch it. I just was using the software and kind of getting into it from that perspective. And then I updated my system here about 2 years ago to go to HD Native with the Matrix Studio and all that sort of bullshit. And that was my first kind of like, oh, cool, I'm into Pro Tools like HD land. So every cable now all of a sudden costs like 6 times the price of a normal cable. And I can't run YouTube and have a Pro Tools session open at the same time. You're telling me I have to use Dante virtual sound card to Ethernet out of one thing to the other just to like watch Michael Nielsen like talk about rack guitars while I try to edit drums. It's like, so yeah, it's
a commitment.
Yeah.
It's a real big commitment to use Pro Tools. To be honest, the audio in Logic is kind of a drag. Like Leon, what do you use Logic?
I'm look, my first rig that I bought Troy's old Pro Tools rig. So I've just been, it's just once a year the subscription comes up and I'm like, you know what, Pro Tools, this is it. I'm jumping over to something else. And I try to use something else for 5 minutes and I'm like, no, I'll just pay the $200 or whatever it is to do what I need to do. But it's funny you bring up the Pro Tools crashing thing because I recorded some guitars. Friend of mine does this like operatic metal thing and he's recorded 2 albums so far. And the first one he did, he was sort of like, okay, it's going off to mix now. And it's a sort of project where it's like, all right, it's all done. Congratulations. A week later, hey, can you just fix this one thing? Because it was all track it, send the DIs. It went overseas to someone else. So it was a bit of a process just to hear stuff back. And I tracked everything to like MIDI everything. So I didn't hear it until it came out. And it was this sort of thing like, oh, cool, can you just bounce stuff out in a slightly different format? And I went to Open Pro Tools and there'd been, I think my Mac had updated and, classic scenario where it was just like, it just wouldn't work. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to download Logic and just do the free 90-day trial. And it worked really, really well. It just took me like 2 hours to figure out how to just edit a piece of audio because, again, the best DAW is the one you know how to use.
Yeah, that's true.
They all do the same stuff.
Totally
It's really converged in that kind of thing. But the thing I like about Logic is, you buy a license and you just have it.
Yeah, you're done.
You're done. Buy once, cry once.
I do like the MIDI on Logic. I'm super happy with that. And I'm fine with the mixing, but if when I'm editing audio and dealing with big sessions like Pro Tools, I'm so much faster in copying and pasting. I end up finding that you know, I was blazing fast on Pro Tools where it was just like, and then in Logic, I do a lot of like option drag all of these option drag all of this, option drag all of this stuff. It's just not the same like paste. So, you know, it kind of is what it is. At the end of the day, like you said, it's whatever gets you through.
I feel like Pro Tools would be like the equivalent of if you were a chef, like cooking on the line, where you just do, you know, like you don't have any, you just want to get these things done quickly. Whereas like Logic is a little bit more like, you know, you own a restaurant where, you know, it's like the Portlandia chicken episode, right? Where, you know, can we look at its name and like, where did you get this? And suddenly, have you heard about Reaper? Oh, now I'm in a cult.
Exactly. I think it is. It's that thing where you could really conform Logic to you. It's a one-person DAW. Like my partner, who my best buddy, who I've been with for 20 years, writing together in our company partner and stuff. We, for a decade, we sat within about 12 feet of each other. My room was one place and his room was right next to it. And when I go into his room, I'm like, how do you hit play? Like, how do you record or rewind? It just basics are not the same. So
I still using Logic, you mean, just like with keyboard shortcuts and stuff. Oh,
I see.
It feels totally different.
It's funny.
And same when he goes in my room.
I was my uncle does film post and has been for a long time, but he's a big Pyramix user. And
okay.
And I just for this, I don't know why I thought of this, but a couple of nights ago I thought, you know what? I don't know what the interface on that looks like, even though he's been using it for 20 something years. So I just watched a little YouTube video. I'm like, man, this is what, like whack. I don't like this at all, you know. But they did the little video I watched. The guy was saying, you know, if you're a Pro Tools user, here's the thing you can import to basically map all your keyboard shortcuts. So you know, T and R will zoom in and out, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess that transition is a little bit easier. But that's one thing that really I think is a real positive about Pro Tools, because if you go into any studio anywhere, most of the operation is the same. There's a few little quirks that, like, you know, it drives me bananas when people don't have the F keys turned on with Pro Tools, because I need to be, I'm not a multi-tool user. I'm just like if I want to use.
Me too. I hate the multi-tool. It's the worst.
Yeah. Do you know what it was? Another slight sidebar, but like the guys that at the studio that I worked at for a long time, they were like this. They were like, use your F keys depending on the tool you want to use, and never touch the mouse. Like if you can, unless you need to. Like we all need to use the mouse for certain things, but learn it as a shortcut. It'll save so much time and RSI and whatnot. And so yeah, that's how I got used to that. And then I
you definitely got me onto that. You were like, hey, just learn these shortcuts, and now it confuses me sometimes when I go from like Pro Tools to video editing.
Yeah.
Because it's
me too.
Like I use DaVinci Resolve now, and it's like sometimes I'll just be pressing R to zoom out, and I'm like, why isn't this working? And it's like scrolling through different tools. So I'm like, wrong workflow, you dummy.
But that's the thing. It's like Pro Tools system to Pro Tools system. Those key things are basically going to be the same. There's a few preferences that you have to change, but yeah, the rest of it's usually pretty similar. Whereas, yeah, if you are in that situation of like, oh, here's my Logic session or my Cubase session or my Reaper session, and everything's completely different, that would drive me bananas. Yeah. But that's just me. So
yeah. Well, because I came from Pro Tools, I built my Logic key commands around Pro Tools key commands.
Oh, okay.
So like I command space for record and I could
go
back to Pro Tools without too much trouble.
It's so sorry, just quickly. This is such a silly one, but that's how I do it as well. But all my because I teach music recording, but they all press like numpad 3 or like F12 and stuff, or they still click
small.
Yeah, just commands. Your hand's always there, punching in and out.
Spacebar is the one. I totally agree. It's so good. You mentioned, so on that tangent of studio stuff, how long you've recently basically sold the studio that you guys built, right? And now you're...
Yeah. Can I just say...
13 years ago... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say I was shocked when that happened, by the way. It was so weird. I was like... I messaged Lee. I was like, man, like Nielsen's like, what? What's happening? I don't know what's happening. I was so confused, but yeah, sorry to interrupt, but like...
Yeah. No, it was like a COVID thing, really. That was the trigger, I would say, more than anything. But so going back to it, 13 years ago, I should go back a little further. We had started our music production company that specialized in movie trailers, Ninja Tracks. And then we had done about 5 years of work or so. And then we ended up selling that version of the company to Warner Chappell. And we worked for Warner Chappell for a year. And like in that transition, we're like, cool, when this is done, we're going to start again and have Ninja Tracks version 2. And we brought in another partner of ours. So there's 3 of us. And then we're like, let's go find a place that we could put the studio in. And we looked for ages, and all we could find was one studio places. So everything is built around one studio, obviously, right? But we could never decide if there was like a B studio that was kind of crappy. It was like, well, who's going to get that one? Mm-hmm. So my partner, Casey, he had just moved, and like, you got an empty house, like let us rent it out as a company. And so we built the studio there. We totally gutted it, and we were able to do equal rooms. Like his and mine were identical. So that's when I say we were sitting next to each other.
That's cool.
We were right on the other side of the wall, and we did it like floating everything, and it was really done incredibly meticulously well.
You had that custom furniture, which I remember when my dad discovered YouTube. I think not long after that, he was like, "Man, have you heard of this guy?" And he's got these custom amp racks, and my dad's like, I guess you describe him as like an old school automath, where he just figures out how to do anything he wants, and that was like, he was like seriously inspired by that.
Oh, that's cool.
Super cool.
Yeah, I think the guy that built the desk for us, it was just sort of like this, started as an art project sort of thing, and then he did all of Hans Zimmer Studios.
All right.
And then we kept seeing those in magazines, and we were like, that's what I want. And we tracked him down. His name's Robert Bayer, but he's in Southern California. So if you're not there, you really not going to ship a desk across the world.
Oh, it only costs a couple $1,000s. What's the big deal?
Throw it on a ship. It'll get to you at some point. So yeah, I worked there. Loved it. Was great. It was an amazing studio, and so nice to have the separate room where I had the amp set up, and I had space for infinite amps and all that kind of stuff. But when COVID hit, like when I got it, I was like, well, I'm stuck at home for a month, but I have to work because I wasn't feeling bad for too long. It was like a week, and then I was just stuck. So I was working on a laptop, and then I'm like, I finished a bunch of music. Like, I'm doing fine on a laptop and headphones here and little like IK multimedia speakers. Like, this is working. And then so I slowly started building my home rig because sometimes I just want to roll out of bed, grab a cup of coffee, and like tweak a mix at 10 o'clock at night and not have to do it during these hours where sometimes I'm tired, and I just like, it's really unproductive to go like, well, it's 9 to 6 and those are the times you got to work. And sometimes it's like, well, I worked for 1 hour today, but I was here for 8 hours. So and then nothing gets done at home, where my wife is like, are you ever going to move this one box from this here to there? Just dumb things like that.
That's my life at the moment, man. So I feel you 100%.
So, it got to the point where all of us were working from home so much. We're like, well, we got this place that we're just not using enough to justify it.
Yeah.
It was a tough decision, but what made it easier is before we made that decision, I had committed to making like this place, which is just, offside the living room here. It used to be the kids' playroom, and it was like neon green and Xboxes and beanbag chairs, but they got old enough to where they have computers in their room, and this was just a dead room. So this worked out, and I was doing really good work that I was really happy with here. And then the other thing, which is just, studio nerdery, I was using the Barefoot MM27 monitors for ages. That's the big, they look like missile launchers. That they're great. They're phenomenal. But when I switched over to the ATCs, and this was a journey. I've had every monitor on the planet. I've gone through, spent so much money. I wish I could redo that journey and just go straight to the ATCs. But I was just like, this is what I've been trying to hear my whole life. Like exactly it. Done. So I used to have 3 monitors and I jump back and forth, and now I'm like, I just got the 2 monitors, and when I do it, it's exactly what I was hoping for, and then that's it.
And so you put a video out about that, and then I needed to buy ATCs all of a sudden, which is quite. I didn't because I can't afford them, but like, I was like, we spoke to James Lugo last week on the podcast, and he's using, because I have Focal Twin 6BEs. I think he's got the Atom, the A77s. But I was just sort of saying to him, like, I love these speakers for mixing on in general, like, just generally mixing on them and working on them. But I don't really like the way guitars sound on them for some reason. They're a little bit like a little too harsh or something. They're not that pleasant. Whereas I was using Atom A7s for a long time before that and really liked guitars on those. And I said, you put your video out. I was like, maybe this is my problem. Maybe I need to spend $12,000 to $15,000 Australian to buy some monitors, something different, and try them out. To my knowledge, there's not anyone that has them around, so it's just like we're very limited with what we have in the in the part of the country we are, unfortunately. So one day I'll go hear them. I won't just splurge that much money on a whim, but yeah, because I think you also compared it to those the bigger IK monitors as well. I watched that video. Which I thought
I had those for a little bit. They let me borrow those because they had just come out.
Yep.
And they were shockingly good, especially for the money. But also, so are Atom A7s. There's Focals. There's Focals I like and dislike. In the same way, like it's like expensive guitars. Like you could get a custom shop Strat or a very expensive PRS that someone's going to say like, finally, I'm home.
Yep.
And then someone else will be like, I didn't bond with it. I had a Collings electric that was I lusted over for 2 years, and I finally sold enough stuff and I got it, and I was like,
it's fine.
Yeah. But someone else, the guy had taken it to someone to just get a setup, and he was like, are you crazy? This is the best guitar I've ever heard. It's like resonant and it perfectly balanced. I'm like, I just don't get it.
Yeah. So you on that note of guitars, one of my students who I was talking for a long time, who's based in the States, they recently got a Shabbat. And were just blown away with, and I'm pretty sure it's because they saw one of your videos. So what are like the workhorses and the do you just play everything and use it, or do you have like the stuff that works and then the stuff you play for fun?
I've streamlined down everything, partly when we were moving the studio because there was not enough space, and then partly there was just a time when I was like, there's too much stuff. Like I had too many rack preamps that were sitting in the corner, too many effects, and there's just too many things that you can't use them, and I wanted to focus on making music and not just plugging into a piece of gear. So I'm trying to find that gear music balance still. But on guitars, I find it pretty easy to do that. So I have, let's see, I'm going to take out my headphones. I hope this doesn't ruin everything.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, the mic's back.
Yeah. We can still hear you. It's totally fine.
Okay, I didn't know if there'd be an echo or something. I'm going to grab guitars and I'll just bring them over. So I have like 5 of them, 5 other guitars that are upstairs in like storage. It's shameful, really, to say like, oh, I have a Friedman, the blue Friedman Telly that I've used on a bunch of videos. Yep. That Grover Jackson made. It says Michael Nielsen on it, and they have awesome. A video of Grover like tweaking it and stuff. So like that me is like, that's a special guitar, and I love the neck on it, but it's a little soft in the mid range. It's almost like a semi hollow body.
Oh, okay.
So it's cool and it sounds great, but I just don't. It's not the sound I go for most of the time. So, but for a long time that was what I would just play around the house because it was also really kind of loud and I didn't need to plug in.
Yep.
And then I've gone through a bunch of Friedmans, but this
I love that one.
This
that
is
looks
just
awesome.
an amazing specimen. And I just have these purple stickers I put on.
Oh, okay. Right.
Because at some point in the videos, it's just as a black nothing, just to add some definition, you know?
Yep.
And then this is like a tribute to the ESP guitars.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Queensryche would have a block in their guitars.
Yes.
In fact, the dots are stickers too, because the normal ones are just a thin circle. Right. And if the light hits it wrong, it just disappears. And right. It's gone.
Yep.
So I cheat with that. So
hey, just a quick question on that. Like, because I've never played the Friedman guitars. How does that compare to like a Charvel or something like that in terms of the neck profile? Is it thicker, thinner? Like what's or a
the
neck
profile they're fatter.
Okay.
More slightly akin to old Charvels, according to Dave. Okay. I picked up a Charvel at one point. It was Jakey Lee's white Charvel.
Right.
Was hanging on Dave's wall when they were working on the Jakey Lee amp.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I touch this? He's like, yeah, do whatever you want. So I was like, oh my gosh, this neck feels really familiar. And he goes, yeah, it's the classic old Charvel neck.
Right.
And so there's a similarity there to the Friedman necks, but it's definitely not like a Ibanez
the Wizard
RG neck at all.
Yeah. Because
much more of a C shape round. And what's nice is I was just telling someone this the other day. There's like lacquer, like a PRS comes and you go like, yep, that's glossy and lacquery. Yep. And then like a Tyler feels like it doesn't have any on the back of it. And then it's really bare feeling. So much so that sometimes you're like, does this feel expensive or does it feel cheap? I'm not sure.
Yep.
But there's varying degrees in high-end guitars of how lacquery or how much I guess they take off at the end of the day.
Yeah, right.
And I think maybe Friedman has the best balance of taking off.
Right.
It just feels great. But I've never had my PRS has felt sticky sometimes, but I've never had that issue with like Les Paul, even though it's just as like lacquery.
Okay, so this is probably the guitar I associate you the most with, this particular Les Paul. It always just sounds great.
It does. I started feeling like it was cheating after a while, and I'm like, I can't demo something with this because I don't know if
it's too good.
Yeah, I put Lawler Imperials in here, and it really does sound great in every style. It's really, it could be a little too maybe bottom heavy sometimes, but I mean it's always has cut and it sounds awesome. But
what is it again? What's what year? What sort of is it?
It's an R8.
Oh, an R8. Okay.
And I don't remember what year it was. I've had it a long time, like 15 years or more. This is most of my favorite guitars were this same story. I went into the store at the time, what was Guitar Center, the high-end room, and they had just gotten in 3 of these, maybe 4.
Oh, right.
And I played them all, and I kept going back until it was like, no, it's this one. This is 100% the one. Same with my Telly, which is out in the other room. I have a blonde Telly, which there was 3 of those, and that was clearly the best one.
That's the story of my Telly as well, actually. I think I went to 5 or 6 guitar shops to find my Telly, and then that was the one. So
okay, and here we go.
Yeah,
so this was my first Shabbat.
Man, that neck is just from a different realm.
It's nuts, right? Look at that. Whoa. That is crazy. I'm going to put it up to the camera there.
Yeah.
Really bonkers. I also put stickers here because with the flame, there was no seeing any of this. And I was doing a charity show for my kids' school, and I kicked off one of the songs a half step off because with the way the light hit, I lost the dot. And it was like, oh, that's bad. Let me quickly make changes here. But yeah, this is really lovely. It was the first Strat that I was like, okay, I get it. This is like, I know, Leon, you have your Strat. That's like that sounds like you bond with that Strat. But like, I couldn't just pick up any old Strat. Like, I'd be like, okay, it's fine, it's a Strat. But this one I could hang with on like everything.
What are the specs on it, just in terms of, you know, for pure nerddom? Because anytime you play it, it's always like, oh, it's like it's the single coil equivalent of your Les Paul to me. It's like, yep, that's got it, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, part of it is the Shabbat thing. There's something about the way they put the guitars together. Like Tom Anderson's have a thing, Sirs have a thing, PRS have a thing, and it's strangely consistent to brand, even though like it's just so much of guitar is just like, I don't know why it sounds that way. you know, like I'm sure they you know, the Tonewood thing and all this, like, who knows? Maybe it's just how they put it together at the factory. I don't know. But the Shabbat stuff, it's built in a really small place, and they remind me of like a Martin Dreadnought.
Okay.
Like a D28, when you just go blang, and all of his guitars were like that. So I had just taken guitars over there to get them fixed because I met Avi Shabbat when he built the first run of Friedman guitars.
Oh, okay.
I have a red P90 dual P90 guitar that he built. So I was taking it over there for him to take a look at. And I played a Strat on the wall that he had made. I was like, this is incredible. And then there was one other. I was like, this is equally incredible. So that was the sign of like, oh, you know what you're doing.
Yep.
Even if he doesn't know what he's doing, it's accidentally doing it great. And I just got this. This was, I had custom. Ooh. This was my like.
Oh, dude. Wow.
This is me. And I'd been a Telly guy and a Les Paul, you know, like a single cut person for so long. And then I just made this transition to Strats between the Friedman and that Shabbat. But I really wanted to get back to the Telly shape and have one that could do everything. So I got the D-Tuna going.
Yep. Is that a down only Floyd as well?
No, it goes up and down.
It goes up as well, right?
Yeah. So it's got that coil taps. That Shabbat, the Strat, has Lawler special pickups. What they're called, Lawler specials. I don't think there's anything super unusual about anything else on that. It's just really nicely made. These pickups are wound by Phil McKnight.
Oh, right.
Oh, really?
From the Know Your Gear podcast. So he has a pickup company called Blackstock. And I did a huge pickup shootout, and they really stood out to me as like, these are cool. In some ways, they were like the Bill Lawrence pickups that Nuno and Dimebag use. They had like a hi-fi-ness to that, like a flat clarity. Or I shouldn't say flat, like an open clarity to them. But then they also had this kind of DiMarzio thing to them that was like fun to play and nice, easy to play, and not scratchy and juicy. I don't know. That makes no sense. The Tyler.
The correct finish on it as well.
Yeah.
Burning water.
That's
wow.
Unreal.
So this is actually, well, obviously, clearly Burning Water inspired, and I've always loved the Burning Water. I'm a huge Michael Landau fan, and I was just going to get a Burning Water, but some of them looked amazing and some of them didn't look amazing. So I was working with Rich Rankin, who runs Tyler over there, and I was just trying to narrow down, like, how do I tell you, like, what I think is amazing, and is it recreatable? Because it's just dripping down the guitar. So I pulled all these pictures, and he goes, well, we don't actually make that. I did some Photoshop color changing. So we ended up doing, this is essentially the Psychedelic Vomit, which is the Mike Landau signature. But instead of the purple, we made the purple black.
Okay,
so
right.
He goes, oh, cool, we'll call it Ninja Vomit for your Ninja track.
Oh, that's cool.
So I got a custom named finish, but when it's burning water, it's pretty much.
So it's pretty funny with the arm contour. And you mentioned the Lawrence stuff earlier. When I was 16 or 17, and like when I really got into guitar, my dad plays and had built guitars and had a bunch of parts lying around. So I kind of, and I remember at the time my parents, they got this like metallic paint that was metallic gray so they could paint all the door jambs in the house. And there was like enough left to paint a guitar. So I like had this old body, and then I saw like the Tyler style thing with the forearm thing, and I was like, oh, awesome. I'll just sand off that thing. And then I saw the photos of the old Steve Vai green meanie where he'd like cut in an extra, like basically taken a traditional Strat lower cutaway and just sanded it down to the pickguard, which is, very proto gem on it. So I also did that, and I had Lawrence's in it as well for the Nuno thing. So it's kind of like, it was like my version of all my favorite Super Strats. And then I pulled it apart for whatever reason. I was going to put it back together, and the parts got stolen.
Oh.
Like
what?
Yeah, it's like my dad had this awesome Les Paul. It was called Limited Colors, and it was like a mocha color. It was like a gold top, but with like a coffee top on it.
Oh.
They took that, and then they took this neck, and they took this like body with nothing in it. So yeah, I always
the drag.
I always feel like one day I'm just going to recreate, and it was like I did a crap job of all of it. And the action was way too high, and the truss rod, I tried to adjust the truss rod, myself, and like shorn off the bolt. So it was one of those things where it was like, it was barely playable, but I still get a little bit nostalgic for it. It's like, oh man. And so seeing that kind of triggers that. What do you have for electronics in it as well?
Well, I was shocked at how they actually do this. They actually finish the whole guitar, and then they just cut with a saw and go. Zzz.
Oh wow! No, really?
Yeah. So if they mess up, the whole thing is toast. I was just blown away by that. So I actually have this piece. They gave me the rest of it. I have.
That's cool.
Yeah. So this is essentially, I tried to recreate the Dan Huff signature model and Michael Landau signature model and kind of put them together. So it's got the Duncan hot stacks, which Dan Huff has in his guitar, which he has a different covering on them, but it's the same pickup really. And then it's called the Super, which is essentially like their take on the JB. Doesn't sound exactly like a JB, but also Dan Huff. Is that what he had in his? I think he had a JB. Yeah. So I think it's basically Dan Huff pickups and electronics with the Michael Landau finish. And then each of these switches do splitting or parallel, which is a new thing. I didn't really know that you could make humbuckers parallel. And
That's so awesome.
Because I like not quite split.
Yeah, my old guitar, I had a series parallel switch for the bridge, so you could get kind of like telly-ish.
It's great.
I remember wiring that, and it was one of the first things I ever wired, and I still suck at wiring guitars, but it's a really cool, like, alternate voice. To me, it sounds like if your standard bridge humbucker is your Eddie or your kind of Nuno, thing, then the parallel thing is Paul Gilbert, like that quacky 88 he had with Mr. Big.
Yeah, with a really clear top.
Yeah.
All that. I agree. It's really nice to be able to have that on each of the settings. And then this button, let's see, can you see this button? Anyway, this button activates the active preamp.
Nice.
Right. Which is almost always at its lowest setting. It's a Demeter preamp that James Tyler shifted the frequency. So the frequency is basically like a low boost, and it quickly overwhelms everything.
Yeah, right.
It's not really a nice thing when you go any more than 15% up. It just so much bass on it. This button's awesome. This will activate the bridge and the neck at the same time, and then you could still switch your switching.
See.
And then so if you have some weird crazy concoction, so I could put it on a middle pickup and push the button in now have all 3 pickups going, and you could adjust this business. And then if you want to go quickly to back to just a bridge humbucker, this will jump back to that.
So it's almost
a roadmap.
Yeah, a roadmap's a good way to say it. I think like the guitar Brian May built with his dad, like you could turn each pickup on and off and change the phase, and you know, that's how he got different sounds. It's
a really great sound. Like I'm blanking on what his name is. Amazing studio session player from the 80s that was huge with Michael Jackson and Madonna, like monster hits. A lot of the like skanky parts.
Yeah,
I was just watching Paul Jackson Jr. Is that his
name?
No,
it wasn't. I mean, he would fit that classification.
Yeah.
It wasn't him. This guy has passed away. He passed away, I think, like 5 years ago or something around there. But he used a guitar that Jim Tyler had rewired. And so all these famous parts were 3 pickups.
Oh, wow.
On at the same time. But it sounds great. It's like everything you like about the Out of Phase, but without being so scooped out.
Yep. That's amazing. So have you found it interesting how, I guess you were like sort of the first person doing the 80s rack videos, you know, have you found it interesting how like acceptable, say, using chorus or having a Floyd Rose? Because you would have remembered like the early 2000s when I started playing, I'd go on like to a newsagent and look at a guitar magazine, and it'd be like someone playing a 7-string saying like, I don't even know what an A chord is, and also fuck shred. You know, that was just the attitude. It was like cool to sort of know nothing. And it was pretty toxic when you look at it. It's like, why would you want to be good at guitar when you should just not give a shit? And, you know, it was just the cool thing was to bag out 80s guitars. And now like, everything is acceptable, which I think is nice, because as you said earlier, like the Top Gun thing, it's awesome, you know. And now it's like you see people unironically having, you know, like guys who are like serious touring pros, like, you know, they have like neon green guitars with Floyd Roses, and you know,
John Mayer's out with like a pink Charvel.
Yeah, no, we can't do it anymore.
Playing blues songs.
Did you anticipate that when you started doing those videos for yourself that like it would actually be a thing, A, people want to listen to, and B, it kind of become cool again?
No, not at all. Had I known that, I would have bought a lot more stuff at the really cheap prices. Yeah, I would have just bought everything at $150. Mm-hmm. And I was able to benefit from some of the early stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's impossible to just dabble in it now, because even an ADA MP1 is like, to get one that works and is clean is $800.
I mean,
it's ridiculous.
Like, that's why you got to have 4 in a rack like that.
Oh yes,
it's actually technically not true. I have 2 MP1s, an MP2, and an MP1 Classic, and there's another MP1 a friend of mine lent me. That's in another rack. So,
well, that's how we became friends. You know, you kind of asked before we started recording, like how legit. We knew each other. I was putting up demos on MySpace that I was making with my like little Boss hard disk recorder, and I got this message from this guy Troy. He's like, "Hey, you like Paul Gilbert and Racer X, and I also have an 88 MP1, so want to come and jam?" And I was like, no way, this guy is not for real. Like, no one else would have an 88 MP1. And yeah, sure enough, it was sort of like, how amazing is this that, you know, you can do this? And yeah, now I kind of, like, I feel bad for people who, you know, maybe had the rig back in the day and, you know, life happened and now they have some time to play guitar again. They're like, oh, maybe I'll just go and buy one of those weird old things with the stupid push buttons. $800. Why would I want to do that?
Yeah, and some of the stuff, I mean, the price, I can't even tell people to go spend. Like, I saw Bogner Fish preamp for sale for like $5,000. So, like, it's at the end of the day, it's a preamp, you know, and like an ADA MP1 is like for $1,000.
You guys both did this.
Yeah,
it's your fault. Like on the internet, there's like nobody
Leon
that's
put
done
out way more videos than I did. He's probably more at fault.
Yeah, fuck you, Leon. Thanks very much for ruining it for everybody.
I am the problem. There was definitely I think when I was just going mental with the rack gear, and I had a friend who was just like sending me stuff, it was like the arms race, like, shout out to Michael Torin as well, because I remember you would mention like, oh, thanks to Michael Torin. I was like, who is this Michael Torin guy? And then, I saw his collection of stuff, and we messaged one another. We'll definitely have to get him on. But
I was messaging him the other night on Instagram. Actually, we were having a chat.
It's just, and he's like, to me, he's also the nicest man. Like, he sends me cookies for Christmas. Like, you don't have to do this, Mike, but you do. So, but the every week I'd like have some new, here's some Sony effects processor everybody forgot about, and be like, thanks, Leon. Now this is going to become unaffordable. Not quite as bad as what you get with like the JHS effect, but definitely there.
Yeah, I was at Mike's house last weekend, and we were joking because, I mean, his rack stuff. He literally has almost everything that you could possibly.
Well, that's when I was like, what don't you have? And it was like 3 or 4 of the most like obscure, 6 of these were made and 3 of these were made, but I'll find him.
But
yeah,
in all seriousness,
he will. He has ways.
In the world, is there anyone that actually has a better, more comprehensive collection than him? Like, in all seriousness?
No, I don't think so. I think he has the premier collection. There's a couple guys that I've seen pictures that are amazing also, but like it'll lean really heavy on Digitax stuff.
Right.
Or it'll lean heavy on.
There's someone in my Discord server who I'm pretty sure owns everything art ever made.
Right. So yes, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So that's often, and they like, and it's funny because all the stuff that I've tried where I'm like, this is the stuff that gives this gear a bad reputation. They're like, no, I've got one. I love the way it sounds, and it's like, that's kind of cool that someone actually genuinely has it and appreciates it. And their rack of art stuff, and they have like 3 of the X15 controllers, which are really good MIDI controllers. And they sold me their ADA pitch rack, which I just always wanted one, and it's like the worst pitch shifter ever.
Oh.
So, and it's
I saw
mono.
that video.
It's mono.
I was so bummed.
So it's sort of like, oh, cool. I'll maybe be able to do like an Eventide style detune with this. It's mono, but it's there. It looks cool. So, it's the Torin collection is like, it is. He needs to do a book, and I've actually emailed him about this and said, just do a coffee table book and have a photo of every piece of gear you have, and
totally.
I'm sure you'll sell at least 3 copies.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. What's even more amazing about his collection, which I can't say, at my height, I would go like, check out this amazing rack. And they'd be like, cool, can we hear it? Not at all, because none of it's plugged in.
Yep.
None of it works.
It's racked.
Yep.
But if you want to hear something, I have to take it out of the rack and we'll plug it in individually and stuff.
That's all like all my stuff over here is just, it's cool, but it's not wired in. I actually have integrated my favorite pieces into a working rack, but like all of that stuff is, it's a bit of a pain to hear it.
Totally. Everything Mike has is accessible. Like, oh, you want to hear this? Would you like to A/B this and this? Would you like to switch cabs?
Yep.
It's incredible. I've actually learned a lot from just being able to A/B.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's really hard to identify what's great about a piece.
Yep. Then you're back on Harmony Central, just it's someone's opinion on the internet versus somebody else's opinion about what does and doesn't sound good.
I used to print out those reviews. I'd print out 20 pages of reviews if I was going to go on a flight and just feel let's read what this idiot thinks about the Sagnator preamp. And it's always the same. It's like, it's fat, warm, and bright. And
there's only so many descriptors people know. But I think that's like...
It totally destroys this. That thing's weak sauce, like...
Yeah.
Is it...
Yeah, not to pump you both up, but like that's what I really appreciate about both your channels, because like this stuff needs to be documented somehow, because it didn't exist. Like Leon, when we met many years ago and talking about ADAs and stuff, it's just here's ADA Depot, and there's a couple of guys on there that will post clips up with their like proto camera phones or whatever it was, like awful guitar sounds, and it's like there's just nothing else out there. So yeah, it's like important. Like you're not doctors, but for the guitar play community, it's doing an important service. So thank you everybody.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Leon.
It's funny because the show we played over I'm sure it wasn't funny for whatever was happening, but we played over East a couple of weeks ago, and on the flight back, we got the is there a medical professional on the plane kind of thing. There was some non-life-threatening but very urgent issue with somebody on the plane, which I'd never had before. And it was sort of you've had that once 24 hours has expired in a band and you've been traveling, the schoolboy mentality is just, it's on 11, so we were all kind of sitting there and, I just kind of leaned over to Brian and I was like, this guy can sing and play bass at the same time. Should he have a look? Do you know how exceptional that is? So yeah, that kind of thing. It's like, oh, I've got a 3 ADA MP1s, one stock, one modded. Can I help?
Oh, that's brilliant! I love that.
Oh man!
Well, not to hawk my own crap, but like what we were saying, especially now, it's like I started doing the Kemper profiles of the rack stuff and the IK Tone X of that because it was for me it was a pain in the butt to put together, of to drag out the 2150 power amp, which weighs
every time
is a vacuum cleaner for a fan, and then it's just a lot, and then to be able to so you don't have to spend $3,000 to hear a Bogner Fish in a 2150.
Yep.
You can just plug into the overloud THU or something.
All right. Question.
Yeah.
Why can't I use the THU to profile my own amps? Why will they not let me do that? Is this
I can't tell you.
Yeah,
I knew that was
gonna. I knew that was gonna probably be the answer.
When we stop
okay.
So that's chalk that one up to a trade secret.
It was more of a rhetorical question because I use that plugin a lot. That's my favorite digital amp. I
think it's really good sounding.
Yeah, and
underrated.
Very underrated. I have it through the Slate subscription stuff, so that's kind of how I got into it. But
they also have your SPX 90 modeled in there. Am I right?
Yes.
That's so awesome.
Yeah,
that's a great public service right there.
That's the Gem plugin. Is that the one, or is that?
Yes, it started as part of Overloud or THU, and then they exported it to part of the Gem.
Yeah, because I have that as well. I use that all the time. I can't believe how much I use that. Actually, it's
good sounding. They did it,
but it does it's just I'm not like a chorusy type of a person most of the time, and then there's been I bought that plugin for a particular mix that I was doing, and I did the thing where I was like, you know what? I'm going to demo the plugin for whatever it was, 15 days, 30 days. And then by the time I finish the mix and it gets signed off, I'll be done. And then I didn't finish the mix till 2 days after. So I had to and it wasn't on sale. It was on sale 3 or 4 weeks before that for half price. And I got stuck with the full bill I was like, damn it. But it was worth it.
Oh, isn't that the worst?
Yeah. But in terms of the amps though, they sound so good. I was again, this is just I apologize. I meant to say that in a more of a rhetorical sort of way, because I remember when that plugin came out and talking to Leon and saying, "Man, I can finally do a Kemper style thing with software. I can't wait to do this." And I was like, "Oh, I can't do this." But it's.
Have you tried the
and the neural amp modeler and
now there's options, yeah. But I'm talking 5 years ago. When
exactly.
Different. But yeah, it's because the Tone X stuff's really cool. I actually use that. I use that for a lot of tracking sessions. For particularly when I do full live band tracking sessions, I'll just throw that on a DI for the guitar players, and it's. Previously, I was and this is in the studio below my studio where we are right now, where I don't have all of my plugins and everything on it, but I do have enough licenses to put my IK stuff on there. So yeah, it was either that or using SansAmp or DigiDesign 11 or Avid 11, but which is still fine. Don't get me wrong. But then you put the Tone X up and you throw a Marshall patch on, and it's like, oh, this sounds great. This sounds not just usable. This is could very easily just be the sound, and then we just finish it up. I still like recording amps, so I can't help myself. But yeah, but it's it's so easy. It's also good now. That's the not unfortunate thing. It's a great thing.
But it's also you did a Kemper pack, wasn't there? It was a Friedman where it was a one-off, or they were produced for a very, very small amount of time?
Yeah, my main BE 100 that Dave made, I kept going back and forth. I'm like, I can't decide on a Dirty Shirley or a BE 100. And he was like, well, I'll build a custom one with the Dirty Shirley on one side and a BE 100 on the other side. So that's what that amp is.
Wow.
And it's amazing. And the Dirty Shirley side is crazy because normally it has a much softer, more vintage feel. But when you put it into the BE 100 power section, it's just a Hulk. And so it's really beefy. But it goes from clean to massive. That's probably what my main... Someone asked me the other day, like, what do you play through? And that's probably the main thing that I play through. That or the 20-watt Little Sister, which is the Dirty Shirley Little Sister, which I love also. Because strangely, I don't really like loud noises. So, like, I like it full, but, like, in studios, like, I've been in studios where people are, like, volume, and it's, like, bashing, and, like, it physically hurts me, and I can't hear it. So, like...
Yeah, I'm a bit
like that. I have a 412 here that... Say again?
Oh, I'm a bit like that as well, where, you know, you spend enough time in front of monitors with all that control that, like, a 4x12 can be a lot if you play it for more than 5 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Do you know,
Yes.
I'm going the other way. I'm sorry, everyone. I when I'm mixing, it's different. I mix really quietly. But when I'm tracking guitars, or actually doing any track, when I have other people around, it's loud. I kind of can't help myself. And also, like, I've said this on this a couple of times, but spending so much time over the last 15 years not playing through an actual amp, but just going either direct and using in-ears or doing recording sessions where it has been really quiet, I sort of miss the feeling of like a 4x12 or a 2x12 or whatever, just like hitting. So I'm trying to spend more time, and I was doing it last week, just cranking up amps just to know what that sensation is like, because I'm trying to connect the dots of, like, you do a session and I know what sounds good through studio monitors, but if a guitar player's coming in and they're expecting something different because they are used to playing in front of a real amp, like, is there a connection there that I need to try and adjust what I'm hearing in the studio monitors to what they're feeling? I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but, like, yeah, I'm just trying to learn a bit more. I'm just trying to understand a bit more from different perspectives, and that's been one thing for me that's been interesting this year, at least the last 6 months probably. So anyway,
anyway, you were saying about the 412 you have in there.
Oh yeah, like I've gone through the journey of like 112, 212, two 112s, and it just, there's something about the sound of a 412 that sounds like the guitar amp. So it doesn't even have to be super loud. You can get a good sound. It has to be decently loud, but not peel the paint. Kind of
because one of my favorite videos that you did is just it's like how to record a guitar amp, and it's quite short, but it's one of those, to me, it's like one of those like public service utilities on there. It's like, you put a 57 here and you put a ribbon mic here and you do this with a channel strip and it sounds pretty good.
I'm sure you guys have gone through this too, of like, there's some days you feel like you're a genius. And then the other days, you feel like you're an idiot.
Yep.
Why would I think that I could tell anyone how to record an amp? Because all of my guitars sound terrible this week.
Yep.
You know, it's like, it's one of those things, you know, it's cycles of like up and down.
How do you find to me, listening to the stuff you do on YouTube in the gear demo space, like, it's pretty clear I feel like people take YouTube way too seriously, one, and two, it's like pretty clear that you've done it for a living. Like, even the demo tracks that you do, and I'm sure you see it consistently where people are like, holy shit, man, like that 90-second intro you did is amazing. Like, you should turn that into a song. And then I'm sure they then dig around. They're like, this is what you do professionally. Okay.
No one digs. No one even reads.
No one digs. Because to me, it's just like, of course, this is great. Like, do you know what he does? You know, like, you do this for money, and especially like, I guess you could say where it all happens. Like, you know, you're in LA, and like, that's just what you need. There's a bare minimum requirement, I guess, to be in the line of work that you're in. You know, where there's like it's a bit more like, I guess, being a pilot, where, you know, anyone can drive a car, but like in order to drive a plane or fly a plane, you know, you got to have the chops for it or something. So how do you find that? Because I know for me, it's just your ears, how hydrated you are, how much sleep you had, and you have like a thing come in where you're like, cool, I need to demo this. And you're just like, oh man, this all sounds bad. And then you put it out and people flip out over it. And then the reverse where you're like, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. And people are like, eh.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I will say though, there was a big learning curve to kind of learning this kind of guitar centric music that's instrumental. Like just everything was kind of different, especially since I was kind of coming from, like, I had done guitar stuff, and then there was about a decade where I was doing score stuff and a lot of synth stuff, and that was my world. I didn't play guitar at all, barely. I think there was a time where I had one guitar and like one amp, and that was it. And I rarely used it, which is why I started the YouTube channel, because I was like, I remember really liking guitar. I should learn how to play again, and then I could buy some stuff. But there was like I told you guys before we started, like I listened to your stuff and I go, oh, that's what awesome guitars sound like. And the mixes that Troy did is like, okay, this is how these pieces fit together. And like I'm always referencing and trying to learn that stuff, and been just really lucky to have people like Dave Friedman, where I send him something, he's like, that doesn't sound right, can you try this? And it's like, okay, I mean, a lot of my a cappella guitar ear has been shaped with Dave, which has been quite helpful. I mean, he's, you know, like, to me, he's got one of the best guitar ears in the business. You know, he's not like Dave Jordan or some record producer, but like he comes at it from the different angle. Like he's sat in the room with all of the best guitar players, and what does that sound like? And he has that internalized, so he just plugs in and goes, that's not right. There was a video that really like nailed that home for me. I think it was at Henning's place, because there was like 5 or 6 amp designers, and they did a blind test.
I remember that.
Guy
yeah.
had to dial in the amp.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the end, I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I believe at the end, they had all picked the amp that Dave had dialed in as the best sounding one. And also they picked Dave's amp as the best sounding one afterwards. So it was like, he just has it. Like, he really knows. So that's been super helpful. And I'm always trying to figure it out. Like, I steal shit from Pete Thorne all the time. Like, how do you make this work? Like, sonically.
I mean,
like,
the very first demo video I ever did was for a friend who makes pedals, and he was like, can you do a video with this Pete Thorne style? And I was like, okay, I think I know what you mean, which is like, write a piece of music that doesn't suck and then go through it. Because, yeah, I mean, there's sort of like, Pete wrote the book on how to do it well. There's like him, there's like Andy Martin, for which his great thing is arranging popular pieces of music for like solo electric guitar, which is like, he's almost like a Tommy Emmanuel but on electric, you know. And it's like, yeah, you're gonna hear like 12 songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all on guitar. They're all going to be really clever arrangements, and it'll just work. And it sort of also doesn't get in the way. And then there's like Brett Kingman here in Australia, who he's just another guy who just sort of like, he dials it and you're like, that sounds really, really good. And he's been doing it since, you know, year 0 on the internet. So yeah, I always kind of think those 3 guys are like, if you don't know, if you get a piece of gear and you don't know how to demo it, just like think, what would they do? And I guess now you have like Ola England as well. He did the whole like, this amp metal, you know, like just, it was like the first, but I mean, it was strange because it was like the first guy doing demos of these really high gain amps where it actually sounded good. It wasn't like a phone camera in a room at a rehearsal studio. It was like, oh, you mic'd the amp properly and you can play, playing ability as well. You know how to get the sound where it's like
it's authentic to the genre too. Like,
you can go on like
so well.
Watch like a 12-year-old video of him playing like a boosted dual rectifier or an Engel or something. You're like, oh, that's what that sounds like. Cool. Now I've got that like reference point in my head. So, but yeah, I think still Pete is the best, where it's like every video has an original piece of music with all the different parts suit the sounds, and he's laid back enough where you're like, oh, this kind of feels like hanging out with a buddy, but then he's really knowledgeable and he doesn't have a big ego, but he's done the big gigs. It's just like, he's to me, he's like he's got the perfect balance in there.
I agree. And what's crazy is how many songs he's done. And because I look through and I go, okay, I maybe have done 40 or something like that since the beginning. And, some are shorter than others and that. But, like, I got to do another one. I have to do another one this week. I'm like, I have no idea what to do. No idea. And he cranks out like 2 a week sometimes.
Yeah.
And they're complex and musical. And
just the thing,
good.
I think that's the thing I really enjoy about, and I did an interview with a buddy of mine years ago, like pre-pandemic, who's a bass player for a metal band over East here. And he was talking about how, like, for him, podcasting is you get to be like a little bit creative, a small amount very often, rather than, doing an album is like, there's a lot of creativity in it, but it takes a long time, or releasing a single or something like that. So I know personally for me, it's like you do a video on an Eventide or something, you're like, cool, this is an excuse to get like the Strat out with the Landau sounds and try to like write a little piece of music, or like learn a piece of music that you've never sat down. Like it's creative in a different way that I think like the full on, like, no, I'm an artist and I need to like release my masterpieces. It's just like, you can just kind of play guitar and have fun and also try to get better at doing these things, which I like. And, even because I remember watching your like Zakk Wylde video, which is still one of the best like recreations of that sound.
Thanks.
And like going through the rack. And I think that's probably the video I was like, oh, I want to get an SPX 90 and I want to like get a DEP5 and these things, just because I didn't know like that's part of the fairy dust on there. And now I listen to No More Tears and I'm like, yeah, that is what that symphonic chorus sounds like. It's literally just a preset, but had to be right place, right time, right kind of context and things like that. So
I like when people will put in a comment. It shows up like once a month. Someone with such conviction writes in the comments, Zakk Wylde used dual rectifiers and whatever Boss DS1, whatever it is, or like the Nuno stuff. Like I'll be talking about the ADA MP1, and they'll be like, Nuno uses Marshall D whatever they are, 2000s, whatever. You're like, dude, I've been obsessed about this stuff for 30 years. Like, that's yesterday he was using this amp. Like, we're talking about this specific slice. And
we were talking a few months ago about the Randall signature amp of his, because it was like, co-designed by a guy here in Perth. Which is a whole story in and of itself. But it's because they're basically, do you guys have Ashton, the brand Ashton over in the States?
No.
I think they were like an Australian. They're like an Australian.
They're like
a
cheap, like student level sort of brand.
Harley Benton in Europe? Yeah, it was like that, but 20 years ago in Australia. So it was just, they were affordable student instruments.
Yeah, but they basically made these like 100-watt valve amps. And I think a little bit of extra goss I got after this was that it's the same factory that made Randall, I think, wherever that came from. But effectively it was like a modded Ashton amp that became the Nuno signature amp, because the guy that designed it owned a music shop here in Perth, and it's Nuno's ex-brother-in-law. So it's a lot of little things happening here. So anyway, that was that became the Randall Nuno amp, but then I think he stopped using it because it was a little bit unreliable. Because from what I understand, because a guy that worked at the same music shop as this was all happening, he used to use them and gig them, and he said, "Man, I had to stop because they just kept blowing up. Like they weren't made to take the punishment of lots and lots of gigs and touring and stuff, and they were like basically pushed to the limit of what they could handle."
I've never had played through one of those, been in the room with one of those.
Me neither.
Never seen one in person.
So there you go. You can go on eBay and look up an Ashton Viper.
Yep.
And a tip there, and then there's probably some basic mods you can do to it. I feel like this is creating some gear chaos, and I love it. I love the thought of
jack the price up.
I love the thought of Dave Friedman looking at one of these amps as well eventually, and what could happen. There was another thing I was going to say with that while I'm over here fanboying. The Zach video was great. There was also massive kudos for the Vintage Guitar Magazine thing, because my dad has every issue of Guitar Player, Guitar for the Practicing Musician, in mint condition. And when I started playing, I used to read all of them. And I remember being, it'd be cool if these were all online or someone doing. And then when you started doing them, I was like, finally someone's done it. And it happens to be someone I really like as well, where you just sort of look at this, see, it's like Skid Row, and look, they're in this ad with ADAs, or all the forgotten brands. I think that's such a cool thing.
They actually take a ton of time to do, because you're reading in real time. So I ended up having an hour and a half that I have to edit down. And then once I've read it, I'm like, I don't really want to go through it again and edit it down. It's no fun the second time.
Yep.
Because I think sorry, you go, mate. No, I just had some old gear catalogs like that. The internet strikes again. But yeah, I tried to do one with an old 1992 gear catalog, critiquing the prices and trying to figure out what they are in relative terms. And basically gear is way more affordable now. But that video was a nightmare to edit because there's so many
just dead space.
Electronic. Oh wait, that's TC Electronic. Yeah. Oh, here's a really bad joke. So anyway, I appreciate what goes on behind the scenes with those. And you were going to say?
I was going to say, speaking of the magazines, that's how I started playing, which is you buy a magazine and there was tab, and you learn the tab, and I'd go to some place and this guy's like, "Oh my God, you're a virtuoso." Little does he know, I don't know what key I'm in or how to use this to a chord or anything like that, but I could do a all fingers tapping thing like this.
Cool, Jeff Watson.
Yes, totally, because that was the magazine issue. So I had all these fun tricks and stuff, and then the 90s hit, and it was well, I can't do any of this. And for a long time, I would pick, if I was recording, I'd pick backwards because it sounded like I didn't know what I was doing, because I had too much of that precision Paul Gilbert. I couldn't play like Paul Gilbert, but that thing that sounded too precise. So I had to undo that. And to be honest, even it was, I would say in the last year or so, I started hearing bands, because my son, who's 17, listens to a ton of Japanese anime rock and stuff.
Yeah, the J-rock stuff's huge.
Unreal guitar playing on that stuff. 190 BPM, the piano player's playing ragtime, the drummer is in quadruple time, and then the guy's shredding on top of all this stuff. And it just struck me of you know what? These things that, because of the 90s and early 2000s, that I had this bias of it's corny to go blah, 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 blah. So I just wouldn't do it. I was you know what? F that. I like that, and I'll listen to stuff with that. I'm just going to start take the shackles off and do whatever I want to do and bring that stuff back that I loved. And it really just made guitar playing more fun.
Yeah.
Because that's what I really love to do anyway. So it's
I was going to say,
whatever.
I feel recently there's been a lot of parts of your demo videos that you do where I'm Nielsen, what the fuck was that, bro? Where it's just
thank you.
It's just this guy has superpowers that is not always showing. Some of the Huff stuff, or even like the Zakk Wylde pentatonic thing, which I've just never been able to do in my life. And then you'll just do it, and it's like, that sounds so good. So yeah, it definitely comes across that, you know, it's kind of, I never know with YouTube as well whether it's like, is this person practicing heaps and they're getting better, or have they just always been able to do this and they've kind of like not wanted to show off? Because it's such a weird medium, you know, where like, yeah, you demo an amp, so it's like most people want to hear, if you play a Marshall, most people want to hear like an A, G, and D and twist the knobs, and you know, that's a demo of the amp. But then if the amp's good, you're going to have fun, so you're going to play like all the cool shit you know how to do. So, you know, and then people are like, well, it would have been cool if you didn't use so much distortion. It's like, no, I was enjoying the amp.
I'm always jealous of your videos because they seem like, you know, you can't tell because it's YouTube, but you're so fluid. And it's funny because I think that's how you speak also. You don't say, there'll be long gaps with no edits, whereas I'm thinking like, he didn't make one grammatical error. It's like so nice to listen to, but that's how you play also. It comes out as like, this is very organic and natural. And mine is like stutter chops. And like, I have to edit this. I'll start it 4 times. Like, nah, let's do this. So my videos are like chop suey just to get the good parts in there.
But you know, as long as you get the good stuff, that's all that matters. You know,
yeah, at the end of the day, just making up off the top of my head, it's just like,
yeah, it's
for the record, that is pretty much how he plays. Like, it's a lot more in time than it used to be, like when we first met. But it's yeah, that's just like Leon's pretty much had that ability since, like, I think you were 18 when we met.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's had most of that ability since at least that, at least then, and just.
I practiced really hard for about like 18 months when I was at high school. And then, you know, I'm sure you go through similar things where it's like some days you feel like you're just playing like a dog. So you're like, right, I'm going to get the metronome out and just practice guitar for 30 minutes. But yeah, I think for me, it's like, you know, it's, I was watching a thing with, so you know who Marco Pierre White is, like the chef. He's an English chef. He's probably best known because he was like the guy Gordon Ramsay studied under, and apparently an absolute bastard, you know, like the one guy who made Ramsay cry kind of thing. Wow. But I watched this sort of interview with him recently. He's like, yeah, you know, I had a Michelin restaurant. He's like, I'm retired. I'm just a home cook now. And this video is like, you know, old, but there's a series where it's just a commercial for stock cubes. Right. So it's hey, Michael Nielsen, can you please demo our modified tube screamer? You know, like, we've got budget for it. Will you do it? Like, to me, it's always like, another distortion pedal. Oh, there's budget. Cool. Yeah, sure. I'll do this. And he's simultaneously phoning it in so hard, but having the best time of his life where he's like, stock cube, you can get that, rub it on a steak. Do you like the way it tastes? Then that's good. Who cares, you know? And he's just been like fucking around for like one of the most amazing influential chefs on the planet. He's literally spent the last 2 decades just fucking around having fun.
That's amazing. I gotta find this.
It's just like, I remember watching this and just being like, this is actually just the energy I want to have in my life with guitar, where it's like, it started off fun, you know, where you're kind of interested in it. And then somewhere along the line, someone told you were good. And you were like, oh, okay, now I have that to live up to. And then that can kind of like poison the well sometimes, you know, where you can lose track of what you're like. You're like, no, I have to play a certain way and I have to do a certain thing. So yeah, sometimes, and it's like, you know, no one's ever going to make millions of dollars like recording and releasing albums of rock music anymore. But that's kind of fun because then you don't have to, you can just leave it all in there. You're like, well, if you don't like it, go fuck yourself, you know, go listen to something else. There's something else out there that you probably like. You know, so yeah, having that, you know, whether it's authenticity or whether it's just like a stupid indulgent attitude, I never know. But yeah, it's having that kind of thing there where you're just like, yeah, cool. You know, if you need me to not do that, I can probably also do it and be a little bit more polite. But also, who's watching this? You know, I don't know if you read like the analytics on your YouTube, but it's like mine's really improved from 100% male to like 99.3% male audience. So, I feel like that's a great win.
That's a big move. Yeah.
It's like, well, hey, this is a step in the right direction. So, yeah.
Yeah. Mine are all, it's like 98% male, mid 40s.
Yeah. And,
which makes sense because like they were on Sunset Strip, like watching bands.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's kind of easy to make fun of that and just be like, dudes in their mid 40s. But it's like their experience is as valid as anybody else's. So like, and they've had to live through, of the 90s of their experience just constantly being invalidated. So, more power to those dudes. If they want to watch YouTube and like hear Van Halen riffs, that's kind of a nice way to spend your life. You could be doing a lot worse things. And, if they want to like watch your channel or watch my channel or watch Pete or something, and also they kind of support this kind of like cottage industry of amp and pedal manufacturers as well, who are, smart people and like decent people doing cool stuff. And it's like, someone has to support that. If no one's buying the gear, there'll be no cool gear. So,
and there's a lot of joy to be had by strangely plugging into one amp that goes and another amp that goes and another amp that goes. I don't know why it just lights me up. It's wonderful.
It's just learning. With you. I like learning, trying different stuff. Why does this do that? Why does that do that? It's I use it as an excuse of why. That's why I use the excuse of having a recording studio and working with a bunch of bands. Like that's why I need to have so many amplifiers. It's like, I literally could use a plug. I could use the same plugin for most things. I can use 11 and it's fine. But But
you could also eat packet like mi goreng and just kind of get by. Sometimes it's nice to have a nice steak or some ribs that you cook for 8 hours. Did you get to your other questions, by the way, Troy?
Oh, yeah, I had one. Oh, one was about the THU thing, so I got that out of the way. Actually, interesting segue, because just I noticed you. I'm stuttering up my words here. I'll start with the first part. You were wearing an Unfair Child shirt in a video that I saw the other day. So are you? I can't remember. Have you got the GB tracker?
I have the GB tracker. Yeah. I wish I had the Unfair Child. I just can't. I have a rack in this corner in the sort of closet. Ooh. It's covered right now.
I thought I was waiting for the big reveal, but it was just a.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's okay. I'm joking.
He's going for it.
All right, here it comes.
So there's the rack.
Oh, right on. That's very cool.
That has like the manly stuff and my Neve and all that kind of stuff. So I just don't turn it on all that often.
Yep.
To be honest, like I have a couple things I turn on, like API compressor, SSL compressor, Allen Smart, and the reverbs, and everything else. Like it's really specific. Like once a month, I'll turn on the Verimu. Or something like that. So I just can't justify it.
You got the 2500 API? Is that the one? Yeah,
love that.
I've been using the plugin of that a bit recently. I've used it like on and off for years, but I feel like I just worked out how to get it to do the thing I want it to do.
Are you using the UAD one?
I'm using the Waves one, which
the Waves one. Okay.
Yeah, I've had that for ages. I haven't tried the UAD one, just because I feel like I can't justify buying another compressor at the moment. But it's just, I've been using it like on drums and stuff, like as a drum submix, and also just on the whole mix bus. And yeah, I've been really liking it. I've also been well into Verimu land as well, just using the Slate, whatever that one, like bus compressor, like Fairchildy style bus compressor he has. Just because I've been using an SSL style thing for years and years. I'm just trying something different. But that's coming back around. So the GB tracker, I did watch your video. You did put a video out on it, I'm pretty sure, but I'm trying to and that was
life-changing for me.
Oh, don't say that.
It's so great.
Damn it. Do you watch his channel? Do you watch Eric Valentine's channel at all?
All the time. Yeah, he's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
he's so brilliant.
Greatest stuff ever.
I think he's like the best at teaching, maybe not teaching audio, but like talking about ideas of how to mix and be creative in the studio. There's a lot of guys doing that, but it's like, I don't mean to pump you guys up again, but it's like when you see someone that is actually that good doing something, like, you know, it means something different than watching XYZ. It's like, I do a YouTube channel to teach you how to like mix a song. It's like, there'll be information in it, but it's like coming from that guy, like he knows what's up and he's been down every conceivable rabbit hole to get to that conclusion. Like that's what who I want to hear from.
Yeah, it's like watching a Tim Pierce video. You're like, well, I could stop making videos
exactly.
now.
Yeah. So anyway, but the GB tracker. So when that was announced, I was like, man, I have to get this thing. And then it took a little longer for it to come out than I was expecting. And I've since got the Little Labs ready. And that kind of does a similar sort of thing, but
also great.
Yeah. What is it about the GB tracker that you're liking? Like still, I mean, it's been a little while now, so
it's super transparent to go through it.
Yep.
So I could record my DI and hit the amp, and then it's super transparent. And then the notched gain stages, really is great, so that it's always the same coming in and out. It's like you're going in this much, you're adding that, and you're taking away that much, and they just match up.
Yeah.
Rather than, I would always have problems matching my gain levels. So I'd be like, all right, this is what it sounds like when I go into the amp, but when it goes through the computer and through the converters and back out in these gain stages, I'm trying to find that level, and I can never get it to match. It was always too much gain, too little gain. It was too squishy. It just never matched up.
Yeah, I find this a similar thing, like trying to reamp. I was trying to work out, this is probably a discussion for a different time, but what would be the most scientific way of trying to get the level coming back into the amp to be consistent? Because I can't quite work out, because obviously, you know, to go straight in through DI or, you know, straight to the front of the amp, like how to measure that level versus, you know, I just don't know how to do it, you know, with metering or whatever. Yeah. But it's, I mean, the solution is to get the GB tracker, but it's very, very expensive. So maybe one day I'll do that. In case anyone is interested in signal flow and what I was thinking about while I was at my son's swimming lesson this morning, because I have a 2 notes torpedo reload. So this is really nerdy. And then I'm really sorry, but I need to talk about this because I have to process it. I have a torpedo reload, right? So it's a load box, but it's got a reamper and a DI and stuff built into it. It's like a multi-tool sort of thing. But I use the Little Labs for all my DI and reamp purposes. So never occurred to me until like this morning, but you know, the Ready has the what's it called, expansion output. Hypothetically, I should be able to take the expansion output into the reamp input on the torpedo load box, because it has a reamper built into it, and then I can reamp out into a separate amp, so I can do a full dual amp scenario situation for recording and tracking. I think you need to see this box. I think you'll understand what it is a little bit more. The 2 notes reload, what it is in terms of a device. But anyway, I was just thinking, like, man, I want to do more dual amp stuff. I wanted to do that a little while ago, just because why not? You know, why just record a rectifier when you can also have that going through your Splawn Nitro at the same time?
And it fills it out so nicely.
Yeah, you could reamp it and do it like that, but I can do it in one hit and I can spend 3 hours trying to connect it up now to save maybe 3 minutes when I do the reamp track. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a real useful time. So I'll just leave that rambling, ranting, raving lunatic stuff for another time. But yes.
I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
That you're uniquely qualified to answer. Verley from Past Effects. Leon, you've shown a lot of the Past Effects. So Verley asked if I knew what a Tim Tam is, which I don't.
Oh.
And if I'm on a diet, she's not going to send me any, but is this something I want?
It's definitely something that you want 100%. It's
Mate, do you know what a bicky is?
A Mickey?
A bicky.
Nope.
Well, mate, you got to learn what a bicky is, and then you learn what a chocky bicky is, and then you'll learn what a Tim Tam is.
What a Tim Tam is, yeah. It's so you know, biscuits in America are those savory things you have, like biscuits and gravy.
Yeah.
Biscuits over here are cookies.
Okay.
So a Tim Tam is a chocolate cookie.
It's like a chocolate wafer cookie.
No, not wafer. It's not wafer.
There's wafer in there.
No. It's biscuit. It's biscuit with a bit of, or cookie, sorry. It's cookie with a bit of
No. I'm thinking of something else. I'm a moron. I actually need to renounce my citizenship.
Mate,
yes,
go
it is.
buy a pack of Tim Tams. Crikey.
You have a cup of tea, you have a Tim Tam, and because it's like a kind of rectangular prism, what you do is you bite each end off and then you kind of suck the tea or the coffee through the biscuit, saturating it and changing the texture. So yeah, it's funny actually because I saw you did the video with all the Pass Effect stuff, which and like the Van Halen flanger thing was like when I saw you doing it, I was like, I hope he has a hot for flanger and I hope it's the first thing up. And it was like, there
it's so fun.
Did you like the Electric Mistress clone?
So that a buddy of mine, Nick Wiswell, who I work with at Microsoft, he has this monster pedal board, and he was going on vacation. He goes, "I'm going to send you all the past effects.
Oh, wow.
You'll like it." So he sent me a box of all the stuff, and he had 2 of the elastic mattresses, and so he let me have one of them. But I haven't had a chance to really dig through it. All I was able to go like this chorus. Oh, cool. This chorus. Oh, cool. Yep. But the flanger was like instantly, as soon as it went, I was like, all I want to do is spend an hour just going.
Oh, it's so good. And yeah, there's I think they call it like the Waldo switch on there for the Van Halen thing. It's like a level of detail. Verley's basically like the Dave Friedman of modulation pedals, like knows more about this stuff and has more of this stuff. They've sent me stuff to demo, but they'll be like, oh, I have a bunch of cool like vintage stuff. Like, do you want a 1975 Small Stone to do a video with, or do you want like a Boss BF1? Or they had an original Electric Mistress, which was like just, if you like Alex Lifeson, you like Andy Summers, it's the sound. But yeah, the elastic mattress is, I didn't really think I liked flanges, and then I tried that and I was like, this is the sound I've been trying to get. It's like that Permanent Waves era Rush.
Oh, okay. I got to dig in with that then.
Yeah, it's because if you do rate and depth like this or like this, like one at 9, one at like 10 o'clock, one at 2 o'clock, or vice versa, and then have the mix all the way up and just add some whatever the feedback control on there is called. It's it's sort of. I've got an original CE1 here that a buddy of mine had, and it's sort of like he doesn't really play guitar much anymore. So he's like, just, have it for safekeeping. That sounds great. But they do a CE1 copy that's like the CE1 without all the ball ache, basically, like it runs on 9 volt. But yeah, they're like the attention to detail. They also do an ADA flanger, which they've just come out with.
Yes, she's sending me one.
Oh, great.
I got to check.
So
I can't wait. I had asked,
that sound.
Like, all right, ADA flanger, cool, but can you make the chorus that is inside the ADA MP1?
Yes, that would be.
Because no one has done that.
Yeah.
And she said it's digital, so I didn't know.
Right.
Because
it's digital, she that's not her wheelhouse. She's all analog.
In that plugin, the ADA MP1 plugin, isn't that just like a normal chorus rather than being like specifically the ADA chorus? Did someone make that point?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's kind of like a generic chorus thing. Because, the ADA chorus is great. And it's because it does the thing that a lot of those 80s chori do where, like, the one side is phase inverted. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you have the rate all the way down the depth, it does the kind of spatial expander style thing, which is really, really cool. On that topic, while we're exhausting all this stuff, do you still have your TC 1210?
Yes, I'll never sell that. That's
amazing.
Forever. And mine is not in the best health. I borrowed Michael Torrens to compare, and his is super clean.
Right.
And mine feels like almost like you turn the input up a little too hot. Still sounds great, but I've been trying to find someone to fix it, and no one will touch it.
Yep.
The real bummer.
That's kind of like the 2290 or the Eventide. Like I got a Switchblade We did a thing with Charles Scott at Bad Robot, and he's like, I have this thing called the Switchblade, and it's just the best thing ever because you route anything to anything else. And then Troy sent me a message like, there's one for sale in Australia, and it was a great price. So I got it. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. And then I got everything, and I was like, no, this is amazing because you can do all the parallel stuff easily, and it's all programmable, and you can just go like, oh, cool, I want to go from the 2290 on one patch to the Eventide another patch. But I do have that thing where it's like, you know, every time you turn it on, there's that little bit of like, is it actually going to fire up this time? I know there's just going to be a time it turns on and it doesn't work, and that's it. And it's sort of like there'll be some part that's 30 years out of production that just you won't be able to get, and that'll be sad. But, you know, at the same time, there's sort of modern stuff, which is...
You just have to cherish the time you have with it, you know? It's
exactly.
Okay. And then you can
I'll still keep it in my rack, though. Like,
yeah, 100%. It's just the coolest looking thing ever. And, you know, the touch, like the touchpad on there for entering
has a
stuff.
specific feel.
Big time. All right. We have absolutely yabbered on and used up so much of your time. Is there, you know, do you have any advice for the gear conscious or gear crazy out there? What would you say is like, if you could meet yourself back when you were green and, you know, talking about John Sykes on the internet before working with them, to anybody who's like getting into playing guitar or doing audio stuff, like what's the best piece of advice you've ever had or learned by experience?
I don't know, but I think it's just like, don't close yourself off. Like, there's a lot of music I don't like, but even if I don't like it, I have this compulsion to figure out why I don't like it and why someone else would like it. And then that's cool. Once I figure that out, I don't need to listen to it again. But like, don't turn yourself off to that stuff, because there's a lot to learn everywhere.
Would you almost say that like by figuring out what you don't like about something, it helps you tune in better to what you do like when you're trying to make music or other things? Like,
yeah, I think it just informs you.
Yeah.
Like, you have a bigger musical vocabulary or sonic vocabulary to work from. I think so.
I think that's pretty good advice. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the Gear Podcast. The amazing Michael Nielsen. We'll definitely have to have you back. Official friend of the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like we just started talking about
exactly.
stuff.
Exactly. Where can people find you on the internet, Michael?
You can find my YouTube page. It's actually Michael Nielsen or Big Hairy Guitars. Easy enough to find. Michael Nielsen Music is my website. I'm going to start putting out music, like trying to do a solo album. It's very slow going, but
because you put out a single recently, right?
Yeah, so that I have some music on Spotify and stuff, and I'll put more up as soon as I get some time to do that. But yeah, it's coming along.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much.
Speak again very soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a blast.
And to everybody watching, thank you for watching and listening to the Gear Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Peace.